We start with the brand new White House budget. And while we wait for the president to come out and make remarks on it today, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leigh Caldwell is joining us from the Hill. So, Leigh, let's go through some of the big numbers from President Biden's budget proposal. $773 billion for the Department of Defense, more than $80 billion over 5 years in COVID funding, $50 billion for affordable housing, $30 billion in support of law enforcement, $18 billion for climate resilience programs. That's a whole lot of money there. What happens with this plan once it gets to Congress?
Yeah, it's a whole lot of money. It's also the budget for the next fiscal year. This is something that presidents do every year. It's interesting that we're actually paying attention to it once again in Washington. But this outlines the president's priorities of what he wants to see money allocated. And this is, at best, a guidepost for Congress to go by, as we know that the Congress is the one who actually has the purse strings to allocate money. And at worst, this is a midterm document that outlines what the Democratic Party stands for. But it has a major increase in defense spending, and that is something that usually is not a part of Democrats' budget. But as we see, we're in the middle of a war. There's a war in Ukraine, and the budget reflects that. This is also a budget that has moved the party a little bit to the center. Things that aren't included are much mention of the president's Build Back Better plan. There's also things that are included that Congress already tried and failed to do, including a tax on billionaires to help reduce the deficit. And so this is an attempt by the White House to set the Democratic agenda and to tell voters what it thinks it stands for over the next few months as they head into midterm elections, Allison.
Leigh, there's a lot of money here, but the number that really matters, how many Democrats support this budget. What are you hearing so far in Capitol Hill about how these numbers are going down?
Yeah, it's really early. Progressives are not going to like the defense spending.
Right.
This is a budget that was also geared toward Joe Manchin. It has outlined a lot of things that he wants. Remember, he killed the Democrats' Build Back Better agenda. And so there's money in here that things that he wants to move forward, including that billionaire tax, deficit reduction as well, ways to deal with inflation. And so this is an attempt to get him back on board with the Democratic Party's plans moving forward. But it's up to Congress to decide how they want to spend money. And so Democrats could say whether they like it or not, but what really matters is there are going to be committees that take apart every single aspect of this budget and create their own budget. And this is a process that takes many, many months. And as we just saw, Allison, sometimes it takes a really long time because just last month or earlier this month, they passed the budget, the funding bills for this current fiscal year that's only 5.5 months left of. So we'll see where Congress stands. But the final funding is going to be much different than what President Biden laid out.
Well, at least they got it done before the fiscal year is over. Leigh, I know we were showing images of Joe Manchin there. We have talked about him so much as someone who can make or break the Democrats' attempt at unity. Is there anyone else in particular that you're keeping an eye on? Or will you start to get a feel as those committee meetings happen who may be the next big problem for the White House and their plans for the year ahead?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things here. So as they do the appropriations process and figure out how to fund the government, it gets really, really in the weeds. And ultimately, it is up to leadership and people who are on that committee, the appropriations committee, decide how money is spent. But if Democrats are going to try to enact policy or new legislation in some sort of new version of Build Back Better, that is what the bigger question is. And if you take the president's policies in his budget that he just outlined, it doesn't look like that is going to be a priority. They're not going to try to pass a $2 trillion bill with all of the Democratic priorities. Instead, perhaps they're going to take up things like prescription drug, trying to cut prescription drugs, try to pass, like I said, a tax on billionaires, or maybe some climate change provisions as well. All these things are going to be maybe one-offs that they try to pass. But there's not a lot of time left, really, before they really get campaigning before the midterms. And that really starts to happen this summer. And that's when most legislating ends. Allison.
Yeah, that's for sure. Leigh Caldwell, thank you so much for giving us a preview as we wait to hear from the president himself. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.